Republican presumed nominee for the United States Senate. And he was selling to Michiganians something that a lot of them felt was a bill of goods. So we're going to talk about that. Where is the president with the economy, and where is your head when it comes to all of this? Moments away from starting, but not, ladies and gentlemen, the moment you've all been waiting for, the room rules. We're here Monday through Friday at 5 o'clock New York time. Top of the hour, I will give my opening salvo, which hopefully will encourage you to join me on the stage. Or you can come up now in anticipation of what you might want to say based on the topic of the room. Or anytime in the next hour. If something is said on the stage that prompts you to want to participate, raise your hand, and you will be invited onto the stage as well. I call people in the order in which I see them on the stage, which may not coincide with the order in which you see yourself. So if it appears that I skipped over you, worry not. It just means I see you further down the list in the queue on my handheld device than you see yourself in yours or on yours. Worry not, because time permitting, I always get to everyone who is on the stage and in queue. Similarly, we no longer invite people to the stage in mass or en masse, but we do so individually. That's to maintain the aforementioned order. So if you're in the audience and you're waving your hand, don't get disappointed. I will also give to you and invite you on the stage, time permitting. Generally speaking, after people speak, they are removed from the stage to the audience. This is not punitive in nature, but just an opportunity for me to maintain that order. If that occurs to you and you want a second go at it, raise your hand. Time permitting, you'll be invited back on the stage for a second opportunity to speak. Unlike many of the other rooms on Clubhouse, in the Critical Thinking Forum, we speak one at a time. We do not interrupt one another, and we endeavor to treat each other with a degree of decorum and respect, even when we vehemently disagree. And for that, I thank you in advance. And finally, if I or a moderator should ask you a question while you're on the stage, we just have a question. It's just a dialogue. We're not trying to start a fight. And if it devolves into the fights, this judge, your moderator, will bang the gavel and bang it hard and bring an end to it. I've got zero tolerance for that kind of nonsense any longer. Ooh, do I sound scary or what? So welcome to the Critical Thinking Forum. We're a little over a minute away from starting officially at the top of the hour, which is when we start. So that gives me time to also welcome Mary, Barry, Brian, and Echo, Miguel, Mana or Mana, LS, Dr. William, Dr. Francine, Met, Dee, Austin, Joby, L to the room, the ever-present Anonymous, Hezbollah, Christy and Vody, welcome to the room. Let's set a minute to go to our exciting start at precisely the top of the hour. And who sneaks onto the stage just in the nick of time? Scott. Welcome to the stage, Scott.
Great to be here, Brian. Great.
Oh, it's great to have you. Great to have you.
As always, I'm running around, Gary. I've been busy all day, but when 5 o'clock comes, my ass belongs to the Critical Thinking Forum, so I'm in here, buddy.
Well, I don't know about your ass, but we appreciate your voice and your brain. Philip, welcome to the room.
Absolutely, buddy. I might have to log out for a minute, but if I do, I'll log right back in.
Okay, Montserrat the Maestro, welcome to the room. We're now at the top of the hour. Welcome to the Critical Thinking Forum. We're here Monday through Friday at 5 o'clock New York time. Today's topic is Trump's spelling an economy the voters aren't buying. I don't understand the strategy. Maybe somebody else here does. But if I were president of the United States, I don't know. And if I were Mike Rogers, the Republican senator, senatorial candidate in Michigan. In Michigan, industrial state Michigan, I don't know whether I'd really want the president to come in and hold a rally of all places, the General Motors Proving Grounds in Milford, Michigan, to talk about the economy. Doesn't that kind of backfire a little bit? Now let me tell you why it backfires. At his rally yesterday, he tried to sell an economic record many voters and local businesses are struggling to accept in Michigan. He defended his sweeping tariffs and claimed that the United States is having its greatest year ever. That's a quote, telling skeptical crowds they will see positive results very soon. If there's one industry that has arguably been hit, broadsided, decimated a bit by the tariffs, it's the automotive industry. And yet he goes to Michigan. He holds a rally at a General Motors facility, and he tells people how great the tariffs are. So sweeping import duties on foreign goods and on auto parts, they've created deep anxiety in Michigan. I know because I'm from Michigan originally. I'm still taking great interest in what's happening there. So none of this comes as a surprise to me. As we all know, Michigan is a swing state. Now, for those who don't understand it, we've discussed it many times in the Critical Thinking Forum. We've even had guests on to discuss it. The auto industry is not confined to Michigan. It's basically centered in southeast Michigan and in the Windsor, Ontario, Canada area. So the automotive supply chains rely heavily on Canadian and international trade. In fact, at one point, the tariffs were so absurd, sometimes a part can be sent, say, from Canada to the United States, affixed to a chassis, and then the chassis is sent back to Canada for final assembly. The body is put on the chassis, and then the vehicle is sent back to the United States for sale. So they were imposing tariffs on that part when it moved from Canada to the United States. Then, when part of the chassis, it moved from the United States to Canada, and then when it came back into the United States from Canada. Tariffs and restrictions. It was mind-boggling that this was the president's approach to the automotive industry in an area where there's a codependency between Canada and the United States. So you come to Milford, Michigan, a suburb of Detroit, to the General Motors Proving Ground to say, my economic record is great, and the tariffs are great. So he claimed that manufacturing is thriving. Well, I looked up the federal data. Over the past year, Michigan has lost some 7,000 manufacturing jobs. 7,000 in 1 year. And the public polling indicates that many voters continue to give the administration low marks on inflation and economic management. To me, this is a political liability ahead of the primaries and the November midterms. The primary is Tuesday, a week from today. Now let's look at the numbers. I want to take a little deeper dive into the numbers, not just with regard to Michigan, but generally. A brand new CBS YouGov poll of 2,193 adults that was conducted just July 22nd through 24th find that only 35% of Americans approve of the president's handling of the economy. 65% disapprove. About 29% approve of his handling of inflation. 71% disapprove. Only 24% of Americans view the economy as excellent or good under the Trump administration this year. That's down 8 percentage points from July of last year, when 32% viewed the economy as good. Not great numbers then, but worse now. And by the way, that's according, if I'm allowed to call out this news organization, because apparently when I do on Facebook, I'm selling out, a Fox News poll conducted July 17th through the 20th. All right, forget Fox News. How about the Pew Research Center? Everybody agrees the Pew Research Center is a great barometer in their polling and surveying. Pew finds that the economy remains top of mind for voters. 29% tell Pew that they want candidates in their home district to focus more on it than anything else this election cycle. More so than Iran, more so than Gaza, more so than free buses and Medicare for all. This is significant. So in my mind, I know I'm being redundant here, but I cannot for the life of me figure what were they thinking yesterday to bring the president in for a rally, which was, of course, broadcast live on certain news channels, some longer than others, in a state where the economy sucks right now, where the election could go either way. Nobody is counting their chickens in Michigan, I guarantee you that. And Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania are really viewed as barometer states when it comes to national elections. It's not that as Michigan goes, so goes the nation all the time. But it seems to be that more often than not, these three states reflect, and they are both, all three of them, high electoral college states, which really doesn't matter in the midterms, I guess. But still, they're a good barometer of where we are today. What are they thinking? I don't get it, and I'm so glad we got Marshall here to start off our discussion. It's your party, Marshall. I don't know if you were in Michigan heading up the Mike Rogers campaign, would you have the president come in and talk about how great the economy is?
Knowing what I know about Michigan's unemployment, no. I wouldn't, because he doesn't have any answers to offer, only promises to give. And, promise isn't worth much. So I don't think I probably would have done that. I can see why, if the GOP strategist or the campaign manager thought they had Republicans that were going to stay home, and by Trump coming, it enthused the core base, which they're worried just won't turn out to vote. That could be a very energizing thing for the party base. But unless that's what you're worried about, you probably don't do that.
I mean, he did talk about El Said, who is not the nominee yet for the Democrats, and may not be the nominee for the Democrats. It would seem to me if he wants to scare the bejeebers out of voters, he would try to paint El Said as a monster. And that would be the topic. And, he would go after the two Democratic nominees, and he would blast away at that, and he would give short shrift to the economy. He might not even mention the economy. to me, it's just seemingly not just counterintuitive, but counterproductive by the president and the Republican Party, because he's not going to come in if Mike Rogers doesn't want him to come in. So what? I just don't get what they're thinking there, Marshall. Unless they're hopeful that people, it resonates with people when he says, "Don't worry, everything's going to get better. Everything's going to get better. Don't worry. Be happy with the economy." I don't know whether that sells to the question of the room any longer. And, of course, I will add this caveat. Things could change dramatically between now and the midterm elections. We don't know where the economy is going to go. This war could end, and it might be viewed economically as really beneficial for the United States, whatever deal they come up with. I don't see it, but I guess it's possible, and that could affect the midterms. But right now, the snapshot right now is not particularly optimistic for the Republicans. So why would you...
The Democrats have an edge. Scott, you're going to have to correct me, but by what, 1 or 2 percentage points on the generic ballot? So if the election were held today...
In the last Fox News poll, it was 7.
7%? Okay.
It's the highest advantage a party has had at this stage since, or the highest generic ballot, I think, difference they said in Fox since 1996.
That bodes poorly for the House and possibly poorly for the Senate. I mean, look, I would not have gone out and bragged about a economy that many Americans don't feel is working for them. Having knocked on a bunch of doors and having people tell me when I get to talk to them that the economy's a worry. I wouldn't be standing out there on a big old platform saying, "Yay, look at me, look at how awesome the economy is." Because there are a lot of, it comes off as tone deaf.
I think that's a great characterization. Tone deaf. You know, he has said in the past, as Scott pointed out yesterday, I don't care about the economy. All I care about is the nuclear waste. I don't care about the economy. He has said that. Well, that's pretty darn tone deaf to people who are struggling to make ends meet. Thank you, Marshall. We'll go to Scott, followed by David. Could use some more hands up today.
Yeah, Gary, and I will say that Fox News poll we talked about yesterday has, I think I mentioned this yesterday, but has Democrats up on income inequality by 22 points, 22. Inflation by 10, already better than inflation. And 9 points on the economy. And 9 points. This is Trump's strong suit. And this is the one thing people thought Trump could handle. It's from Trump. That's not good. As he would say, nah, it's 50, not good, okay? Very, like affordability, okay? So I mean, I think that's a problem. And he's committing a sin. He's making a mistake that Biden, right? Biden did the same thing when people were anxious about inflation, about prices. They said the economy is bad. And really, when people were saying the economy in that poll, I think they were talking about prices, and the Biden would say the economy's strong, right? The economy's, what's the stock market, and other things. Yeah, you could say there were strong indicators, but there are other indicators. It's more complex, right? I mean, the economy's more than the market. It's more than the Dow Jones. It's more than, it's a complicated reality. And I think, while inflation has slowed a little bit, people still don't are feeling, right? People don't feel the economy. The real bad news for Trump is, and again, I think people don't want to be told that they're anxious and they don't feel like things are working a bit. They're really wrong and they just need to look hard. Again, Biden made that mistake. The Biden tariffs, that was a big mistake. It's a mistake Trump shouldn't be making. But I mean, the other thing is, I think that people make up their minds on the economy in June. I mean, this is, if people were talking, listening to some politicos a while back, a couple months ago, on a podcast, they were talking about Bush and Clinton and how people had anxiety about the economy in early summer. It had rebounded. It was strong by the time of the election. But Clinton did it's the economy, stupid, and people thought the economy was bad. And even though it turned around by the fall, that wasn't soon enough. And so people are going to make their decisions right now. Have probably made them a few weeks ago about how they're going to vote on the economy. So I think on those issues, I think it's very surprising that there's much weakness in the constant attitude lock. I mean, people are right now, this point, sort of rendering their judgment, and I don't think it's going to be flexible. So I don't think anything that happens in the fall is going to change that factor, how people view the economy and how and who they blame and reward for it. So, thanks, Ken. That's all.
Yeah, I think it was you yesterday that raised the question about whether the president is actually trying to lose the midterm elections.
Or is it lose them different than that?
Right, which doesn't make sense. But that being said, he's acting as if he's trying to lose the midterm elections. I think the stakes are too high to lose. He has every incentive to fight for a Republican majority because, as we all know, a loss in November would derail the rest of his term. And as you pointed out yesterday, a Democratic-controlled House of Representatives would get subpoena power. They could, as you pointed out as well, they're never going to, they may impeach him, they can't convict him and throw him out of office, but they can expose his administration to probably relentless investigations and exposure during a third impeachment drive. And we already see legislative gridlock, especially if the Republicans lose both chambers. That would freeze the administration's legislative agenda completely for 2 years. But his deeply unpopular decisions, the political environment, the policy outcomes are really hurting the party's numbers. People are unhappy with high interest rates, although you said they're coming down a little bit. Stubborn inflation, rising living costs, gasoline prices, they've come down a little bit, but they've been above $4 a gallon.
Median housing costs at an all-time high. I mean, there's a lot of factors that make it harder.
Right.
It just feels harder for people.
The energy markets are disrupted, and that's probably souring public sentiment. I mean, he's sitting at 37%. That's, I think, a historic indicator for the incumbent party. And an indicator, I mean, historically that would show that the incumbent party will suffer steep, an indicator that the incumbent party would suffer steep losses during the midterm cycle. It's almost preordained, so why does he throw fuel on the Democratic fire? That's the one thing the Democrats hit. I think the one issue the Democrats hold over him is the economy. And he makes a speech such as the one he did yesterday in Milford, Michigan. To me, it doesn't make sense. And I think that's what leads to people to speculate that maybe he wants to lose this election. Scott?
Well, I mean, I don't know if wanting to lose it, but not caring about it. I mean, I think he's more important, and he's more interested in enforcing party discipline, in settling scores, and punishing people that said January 6th is a legitimate problem, that sort of thing. And I think that's the kind of stuff that motivates him, like maintaining internal party discipline. I think he doesn't want to see people break ranks and that sort of thing. So that, I think, is what drives him, right? Not the broader electoral. But you know what? Trump might have a better time fighting with Democrats. Like it might. I mean, he does better as the opposition sometimes, right? I mean, it's better sometimes to have the enemy. I think for his personality. I mean, that might suit him though. So yeah, I'm psychoanalyzing. So that's something. But I don't know that he's thinking, oh, it'd be great if we lost. But I don't think he's prioritizing winning, that's for sure. It's not a top priority. It doesn't seem, given the kind of things he says, given the kind of choices he's made, given the kind of propping up candidates like Paxton. I mean, he's made Texas a race, right? I mean, Mel Marshall, I talk about this a lot because Marshall's my guy on the ground there, a guy on the ground. And I'm asking him about Calrico because I'm just fascinated. But this would, I don't think Martha can speak to this. I think that Cornyn had been the candidate and Trump gone in for Cornyn, this wouldn't be a race right now. Cornyn's an incumbent that could practically print money. I mean, now Trump's doing things a race. I don't think he's focused.
So, based on what he has done lately, I'm wondering whether he recognizes that defeat is inevitable, at least in the House. And he's trying to preempt the debate by amplifying claims that the U.S. election systems are vulnerable to being rigged and stolen. There are those who have analyzed the rhetoric, and that's the conclusion that they've made. The Brennan Center for Justice and the Campaign Legal Center both have, according to reporting in The Guardian, both have stated that the rhetoric is really that rhetoric, not what he said yesterday about the economy, but what he's saying about the stolen elections, is designed to preemptively delegitimize the Democratic wins in November. In other words, you can't beat them, so you've got to convince the populace that they stole the election.
And that's the thing, right? It's what Bill Maher said. The Republican line is either we win or you cheated, right? And that's kind of the. And I think Trump wants that.
Well,
there's
another portion of this. When this happened in the 1870s, the Democrats, who then led by Tilden, tried to convince the rest of the American public the elections were rigged. Now, the key distinction is that Tilden loses, and so does Trump. Hayes wins, and so it's the opposite party in power at the time of the pronouncement. But the Tilden group in the Democratic Party tried to persuade the nation elections were rigged for 30 some odd years. And we didn't fall apart. So we've at least faced that kind of doubt before.
Of course, today it's amplified because of social media. I mean, the biggest influencers are bloviators, and we know who they are, who are already making these kinds of claims, and they are called influencers for a reason. They are influencing public opinion. And of course, if there is reason to be concerned about the fairness of our elections, of course we need to know about it. But if it's being manufactured, then you're eroding the democracy that this nation is built upon. You're telling people, I mean, yesterday we had 2 people say, and these are folks who have voted every opportunity that they've had in the United States since they've been eligible, say that they might sit the election out. And I know other people like that. I don't think that
they didn't move. Yeah, but they didn't move. Those 2 people didn't move their minds because they had been told the election was rigged. Those 2 people moved their minds for different reasons.
Yes, but I think there are those who truly believe the elections are rigged. There was an election recently. Oh my God, I apologize, I can't remember where it was, but they were waiting for the urban votes to be counted, which was a slower count because of the large number of votes, and
You're not talking about the California mayor's election, are you?
I could have been. And yes, I think it was the Los Angeles mayoral election. And, see, of course they found votes. Of course the Democrats found votes. They were losing, and then they suddenly found votes. Well, I can tell you, having been a reporter since 1969, it is not unusual for the outlying smaller voting districts to report the results ahead of the large urban districts. That's always the case. And so that's why, you can follow the results of an election by talking about how many actual votes have been tallied by the state, or you can follow the election talking about the exit polling that the media have. But in either event, you could be way, way, way behind, and the exit polling would suggest that you're going to win. Now, it's not official, but it's spot on oftentimes, not always, but it's spot on oftentimes. So, do we need to unduly erode the confidence of the American people in the manner in which it is being eroded? Or is there really, in spite of all the investigations and all the court cases where they've come up with zilch, but is there really something nefarious going on here that we don't know about, and that's why we have to curtail mail-in voting?
No, but I think though this is my point by referencing the other time this happened. We should look back in time to see what they did to reinstill trust in elections, right? Because a whole half of the country believed the election was not legitimate. And that was talked about ad nauseum for about 40 years on that side of the aisle. And so the nation's faced it before, and we've come out healthier for it. We have the possibility of coming out healthier. Doesn't necessarily mean we will. America can do lots of things that are healthy for it, but in my lifetime it hasn't. So sometimes we do healthy things, sometimes we don't.
Were people so violently divided over the issue then as they are today here in the United States?
Yeah, I mean, it was literally
and breaking up relationships over it.
It was literally 10 years after the Civil War had ended. The country still did not trust itself. It was only
the election is 1876, so 11 years. Because Appomattox was signed April 6th or April 9th of 1865. And they were more divided than we are now. They just spent maybe a single decade trying to patch friendships and family relationships and mend them. Right? So one could argue the American polity, the American experiment was far more brittle in the 1870s than it is currently.
Wait a minute, that was a schism over the attempt to create another country, break free from the United States of America.
Yeah, no, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm saying that certainly is a greater trauma than what we have faced currently. As a consequence, the greater trauma made us a bit more brittle when we put ourselves back together, right? It was not. The Indian Wars were the first wars the American military fought together as a whole from north to south. You had soldiers who had fought on opposite sides fighting together. So at least for me, I argue that it was a much more brittle time. The connections were a lot more tenuous. The relationships were a lot more tenuous. We at least have the hindsight of 80 years of somewhat health when it comes to the country's democracy, and it comes to the way we've done things. We have a longer time period of doing things in the right way. So this should worry us, certainly. But we should also look with great expectation the future, because we've overcome it once before and we can do again.
Well, the way this is being exploited and blown up by the president and repeated ad nauseum to millions and millions of people on social media and in the news media makes it perhaps not exactly analogous to the 1800s, and perhaps even worse. I don't know. You may be right. You're the historian. I'm not. But my sense is that a president of the United States' job is to bring us all together and heal us, not cause division.
Yeah, but Johnson wasn't a healer either. Johnson ended Reconstruction in the South because he wanted to give the Southern senators a break, right? I mean, maybe uniquely, Johnson can be argued in the aftermath of the Civil War to be equally divisive to Trump in terms of national unity.
Maybe I'm not an expert on Johnson, so I can't speak to that, but I can speak to what's happening today, and I find it very disquieting, frankly. Thank you, Marshall. We'll go to David, followed by Pirate Bear. David, are you with us?
David.
Okay, we'll go to Barry, followed by Prem.
Yeah, man. Why people are
Barry, followed by
Can you hear
Prem.
me?
Barry, followed by Prem. One at a time. Barry?
Thanks, Gary. Yeah, I didn't have much. I just first wanted to offer my condolences about Mayoral. And second, I don't know how we got on the top of elections, but they've been planting this into our psyche for well over 20 years, just in the movies alone. Robin Williams movie in 2006, Swing Vote, Man of the Year, then the Kevin Costner movie, Swing Vote, I think it was called, 2008, about faulty machines miscalculating votes. So they've been doing this to us for as far back as, most of our adult lives. So it's nothing new, and there is no reality now. They'll tell you the economy is great. It doesn't matter, you're paying $5 a gallon still. It's just all bluster. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. We'll go to Prem, followed by Alma.
Hello, yeah, hi everyone.
Hi.
Hi, good morning everyone. I don't know what's going on, like Trump selling this or Modi buying that. Like why we all people are after these 10, 12 peoples? What they say, do this, do that, and we are following that. He do this, vote that. Why? We know everything in this world. What's going on?
Not exactly sure what your comments have to do with the topic at hand, which really is the president campaigning on an economy which he claims is great in a state where the economy ain't so great, and why would he do that? I think that's really the topic of the room, but we did get onto a little bit of a tangent. I brought us onto a tangent about the president pushing, well, because it was related to this, pushing, because I'm asking what's his motivation? Is he trying to lose the election? And that kind of led to, he's trying to perhaps preempt the election, the defeat with such claims. But you want to try it again? I'll give you another opportunity, Prem.
Where we, for what, for whom we talk about, like where we are living, or where we born, or where we will go. Why only for this one? We know everything.
Okay, so you're asking why this is the topic of the day?
Yeah.
Well, I think I explained why it's the topic of the day. Alma, followed by Eleanor. Alma.
Hey guys, yeah, I'm in the car. Just want to make sure you guys can hear.
Yes, I can hear you, man.
Awesome. So, Tom, it's pretty straightforward for him. He's not a nuanced guy. He looks at the stock market, he sees it flying high, he thinks the economy is doing very well, so he's going to campaign on that. And if people are struggling to make ends meet, and if gas is 5 bucks a gallon, 4 in some places, I mean, you're doing pretty good anyway. So what's the problem? That's how he looks at it. So that's why you're never going to be able to get into address the issue, address the reality as it is. And historically, the incumbent, like somebody mentioned earlier, the party in power is going to lose in many times. Now the question becomes, what if they don't do it? I mean, that's my biggest worry, to be honest, and my biggest concern, largely because the Democrats don't appear to have a plan. The only plan that they are campaigning on is that this guy is bad news and he's gonna get things worse, and you have to put us in power so that he doesn't keep getting things worse. I don't think that's a legitimate or that's a plausible plan. People may end up voting for Trump out of fear of what the Democrats are, not what they're going to do, not what they're not going to do, which is they're not going to do anything. Like they're just, they'll sleep at the wheel. They're just obsessed with Trump. This country is way too big to have a political plan like this. The economy in this country, a whole bunch of other factors impact the entire planet. We can't have people not knowing what they're doing in charge. We already have one that doesn't know what they're doing, which is Trump and his gang. If the voters look at this and think, he doesn't know what they're doing, they don't know what they're doing, and maybe I should stick with the one I already know. And I have a pretty disturbing feeling that we are heading in that direction. And I guess we'll find out in about 90 days. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, you may be speaking to a problem that the Democrats have in messaging. And I would agree with you, if that's your point, that the party has struggled to get a single, unified, national brand. And it was always, I forget who it was who said, if you want to have if you want to have a successful resolution, you got to have a slogan. And it doesn't seem like the Democratic Party has a slogan. But I think there's been a relatively consistent messaging toward pocketbook issues, not abstract ideology. I think there's some popular, clear messaging on the immediate economic concerns, but I think there's also internal party division and a lack of a single national messenger for them. Who's the head of the party? We know who the Republican Party is. Is it Chuck Schumer? If it's Chuck Schumer, the Democrats are in big trouble. I actually predict that if Schumer can't deliver the Senate, he's out as Senate Minority Leader. That they ought to be voting him out, or they probably will be voting him out. There are internal party divisions. I pointed out on my social media today the problem that they have with a single fringe group called the Democratic Socialists of America. Because the Republicans are grabbing onto the DSA and trying to convince the voters that the DSA, they're not socialists or communists, and they are not an anomaly in the Democratic Party, but they are the future of the Democratic Party. And I actually asked a basic question about that on my social media, and I just got torn apart by the liberals for asking the question because they were certain I had a hidden agenda designed to attack the Democrats, which, go back and read my words, this is your bias that you are trying to overlay on me. I speak pretty unambiguously both there and here about how I feel about things. I'm not right all the time. I'm not suggesting that people need to agree with me, but I really dislike it when people try to put words in my mouth. But I think that's an area where the Democrats, they don't have a good, clear message. But the one thing that they keep hammering, everybody I hear on the talk circuit, Alma is talking about an affordable America. Affordability, affordability, affordability. No matter what you ask a major Democratic politician, they're going to turn the answer to affordability, lowering daily costs, anti-corruption and ethics. They're very, very strong in trying to paint the Trump's inner circle with a brush of corruption. I'm not saying it's accurate. I'm saying that's what they're trying to do. And I think they're trying to, in less measure, capitalize on the president's unpopularity by saying, do you want another MAGA Republican Congress? And that may resonate with the voters, but I think you're correct, Alma, as well, that the actual vision is muddy. They're not in accord on foreign policy. They're fighting themselves over foreign policy, mainly vis-a-vis Israel and Iran. So there's a good argument to be made that, you may not like the guy you have or the party that you have, but at least you know what it is. And if the Democrats are lagging in their ability to message, why would you take a chance with them when at least you know what you have with the Republicans? I don't know whether, if I were assessing it, I would adhere to that thought process, but I don't think, Alma, that you are alone. El Normal, followed by C.
Hi, Gary.
Hey, buddy.
Here. Hi there, and everybody. You're being very prolific, Gary, with your blog posts and all of your other work and this forum.
Oh boy, have I stuck my chin out there, haven't I? Woo-wee!
Wait, in what sense? Where?
On Facebook. Whoa!
Oh, I didn't even read that. I just heard you refer to
Oh, baby, it's been great. You know what, Norm? Hold on, see, you're next. Hold on, you gotta wait your turn. You know, Norm, it's really interesting. I quite often, when I post things on social media, I will say, the president says. If I do that, the liberals going to attack me. How dare you just say the president says this, you're carrying his water. If I say, Fox News reports, how dare you quote Fox, they're not credible. That comes, of course, from the liberals. I no sooner posted something about a Fox News report that I posted something about a Washington Post report, and I got conservatives attacking me. You can't go by what the Washington Post says. I mean, this is how divisive we are right now, Norm, and maybe Marshall is right. Maybe we went through a period of our history when we were so divided. I'm not a student of history to that degree, but all I can say is the way it is today, oy, 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 oy.
Can I quote you on that?
Absolutely, if you can spell it.
Oh, why? All right. Excellent little side note we're having here. So I have some funny journalist tricks that you just reminded me of. So I'm going to share them with you. The president insists. That's a harmless thing to say, but it obviously implies that he's full of baloney. Right, Gary?
Yes, there are stories where the adjectives used are designed to create doubt in the mind of the reader about what a person
Yes.
is proposing. Absolutely.
That's a verb, by the way, for the record. That's a verb. Now,
Yeah, I mean,
another
verbs, and C, once again, you have to wait your turn. Do you understand English, or is this a second
You
language
can
for
always
you?
pick me up, you know I'm fine.
Okay, I guess you want to be kicked off
Well,
then.
give her
That's,
one more
I
chance.
appreciate that. No, she said I could kick her off.
All right.
Go ahead, Norm.
She doesn't know. Okay, another thing that I noticed that my alma mater, the New York Times, has said is the president says with no evidence. I love that one as well. As if everything becomes. I mean, these are little tricks that we use. Um, Another thing that they do when they want to make a horrible accusation uh, about somebody, like if you're in a direct interview, people are saying, you never say who's saying it or what, or people are asked, not me, I'm just a reporting it.
Right,
So
of course, the president does that too. The
Of
president
course he
said, someone came up to me and said, Mr. President, sir, ba 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 ba. He uses the same exact technique.
Of course.
It's up to us to train ourselves to listen carefully. And by the way, when they say the president says without evidence that the election was stolen, that's accurate. There is no evidence that an election was stolen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. In any event, the news has been somewhat captured, and I'm speaking more for the Times. I've never regarded the pundits lined up at Fox television, cable net news. They're not trying to be fair and balanced, so to speak. They're pundits. They are advocates, and they say that openly. And presumably the people to trust are Brett Baer and oh gosh, help me. Who's
Gary
Gary
Baumgarten. Gary Baumgarten.
Gary Baumgarten.
Martha McCallum, maybe.
And what say again?
Martha McCallum, I think she does Fox News Sunday.
That sounds right. And what's the name of the elder statesman who always reports on the politics?
MS Now, those folks that are on prime time are not reporters. And
exactly.
and
Thank you.
CNN, a lot of those folks are not reporters. Some are.
Yeah.
Some are interviewers, but some are. It's just like with this new journalism. The mainstream journalism is biased. We now have real journalism where people go out with their cell phones and do interviews. Well, 9 times out of 10, and that may be calling it short a little bit. It may be more than 90% of those folks that are doing this. Unfortunately, they're advocates. They're not journalists. They're part of a movement. That's not objective journalism. You're trading. Basically by rejecting the old mainstream media as we have in mass, and a lot of it, as you point out accurately, is the fault of those of us who are purveyors of mainstream media. But we have jumped out of the pot and into the fire. This is not better, this is worse. And it's arguably and statistically so I can show it. But that's not what today's show is about.
All right, so I'll touch briefly. I guess we're a little bit early here. We don't have a lot of guys on the stage, but the guys who are left are very good. So I'll say a couple things. First of all, I can't figure out what the president is trying to sell with the economy. It makes no sense to me whatsoever. And I don't think it makes sense to anybody else. Now, I have a 30,000-foot view that what he's trying to do is create a trade surplus because he feels it's better if there's more money coming in than is going out. And he's trying to repatriate production. I think that's his idea. And if anybody wonders, Trump is I think you know this. He's a character. He's a troll. He's petty. He's petulant. I've said this stuff on the stage before. He is impulsive. He's erratic. All these things. And we voted for him in incredibly millions. So people knew what they were getting because we've had him before. That said, he's been talking about the stuff that he's doing forever. We can go back to the early 80s when he said he wanted to take Card Island from Iran. As soon as they took our hostages, he wanted a full intervention, and people mocked President Jimmy Carter. for failing in his operation to get the hostages out. He wanted to copy the Israelis who got our hostages out of Entebbe. And by the way, Bibi's brother, Yonatan, died in that raid. But anyway, our raid failed. We've gotten better since then. So, and I think most people think the tariffs are just insane. If anybody can defend them to me, I'd love to hear it. So, is he trying to sell us an economy that isn't working? Yes, obviously, yes, of course. Whether it could work better, I'm not sure, because it wasn't working so great before. On a few other things, we talked about the fact that he's trying to undermine trust in the institution of, in the voting, in the polling, in elections. And that presentation the other night was puzzling. It was bizarre. Perhaps an attempt to get everybody to focus on, Chinese voter roll theft rather than on the war in Iran. That said, don't forget we had the Mueller investigation, and that was all about a charge that Trump had stolen or rigged or colluded in the 2016 election by joining forces with our enemies' election. So, and that also served to undermine our institutions. Speaking for the Democratic Party, my party, as I like.
Right, but we're not talking about Mueller. We're talking about Trump right now. And
Yeah.
Here, this is how absurd this is. They have wildfires in Canada. The smoke comes over the border. Open borders, baby. Open borders. They got over the border. ICE and border control couldn't stop them. The smoke came in. And what does the Trump say? More tariffs on Canada because they're not managing their force. Well, guess what? Already Canada's goods trade surplus has expanded to recent highs since the tariffs have gone into effect. So that's a great idea. Let's throw more tariffs. I mean, remember what Einstein said, if you do the same thing over and over and expect different results, that's insanity.
By the way, he never said that, but that's another thing. But I get your point, and I take your point. And if you wanted me to say, sign off on Trump is a little crazy, yes. Yeah, of course he is. And I don't know where he's going with this. And I do expect him, in terms of the slogans that we should touch on, I was going to fill it in, but you said it for me. Look, Trump has Make America Great Again. That's pretty darn good. And Democrats have affordability. Now, how can we make things more affordable? I don't know. I mean, I think we should have a room on Mamdani and the stuff he's doing with the city cooperative grocery stores, which, by the way, is something Khomeini did in 1980. Hint, hint. And, cooperative city community councils and so forth. And did you see that Mamdani published the names? I think it's 1 million New York City owners of homes and apartments whose places where they live are worth over $1 million. Not just people who are using PA to care. He outed everybody. He put their names and addresses online. Even lefties like Cynthia Nixon are in that listing, members of the city council. So again, there's another, the Democratic Socialist approach to the economy probably won't work, but affordability is a great slogan, even if it's meaningless. The Republicans are going to run on the Democrats are crazy and transgender, I predict. And of course, our previous slogan from the Democratic Party, "No Kings," I think was a bit of a bust. So that's basically what I have, Gary.
And you are absolutely correct that Einstein never actually said or wrote the famous definition of insanity. The quote that's often attributed to him is, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. But that doesn't mean that it's wrong.
Oh, no, that part I agree with.
Thank you, El Normal. We'll go to David, followed by JJ.
Well, first I'll say this. First, let me just say, I don't care about what people message because they just message stuff and then they don't do anything anyway. So that's gonna make people more upset, right? So don't talk about anything you're not gonna actually literally attempt to deliver on. Are you really gonna put a good faith effort to deliver on? But when I think about Donald Trump, this is the thing that constantly comes to my head. We're in Venezuela. we're in Cuba, we're in the Middle East, we got Russia, Ukraine. We're everywhere outside of this country. We're putting, you get a tariff, you get a tariff, you get a tariff, right? Everything's going on. It's like a bunch of spinning balls, and nobody knows what the ball is spinning to. You got money going here, money going there, money going everywhere, but the money doesn't seem to be, but the actual baseline American people here are the individuals that, that were suffering. And I went back to look because I wanted to do a slight comparison. I went back to look there. So when Biden was in office, right, in 2021, inflation rose very high. It rose to about 9%, it peaked at 9% in June of 2022. In response to that, the Federal Reserve raised interest rates aggressively. They made mortgages, car loans, and borrowing just much more expensive for people. And this contributed to what we consider housing inaffordability. And even after inflation slowed, right, prices did generally remain higher than they were before, so they didn't really decrease in any sort of, in any sort of major way. And you still had many Americans who felt like, despite some economic improvements, right, that were happening, it just, as you know, he's not president anymore, right? Nor did Kamala Harris win. Obviously, the economy wasn't in the state in which even the Biden administration was trying to present it. I remember people would talk about how, they put some millions of jobs in the economy. I always ask people, because every president does this, including this one. All the presidents will look at certain numbers, employment numbers, but they never tell you, not that they're ever going to tell you this, but how many people got a full-time job? How many people working 2 or 3 jobs meets? How many people working part-time jobs? How many people signed up for a temporary job, and that's the only job they had for a month, right? In the time period. And then how many people just dropped out and said, I can retire, or said, it's just too hard, they got out of the system, right? So then you get up to Donald Trump, right? And we're looking at where we're at here. Inflation has remained high. Well, the Federal Reserve targeted somewhere around 2%, right? Mortgage rates remain very elevated, so that hasn't really changed. Home prices are still extremely high, right? Affordability, mortgage, it's still hard. It was hard under the Biden administration, and it was even harder under the Obama administration for people particularly millennials, and even now for Gen Zs to buy homes or even think about participating in it. That's still the same. There hasn't been any dramatic shift under him. And then just constant tariffs are on, tariffs are off. You get it, everybody got all that kind of stuff. Going down. Labor force is slowly slowed down. Some things I'm not saying are directly his fault, but look, living here in California in the Bay Area, it was maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, Meta laid off 4,000 people at 2 a.m. in the morning. Right? So you're seeing the tech companies doing all kinds of things. You see how AI is already having its own sort of impact, right? Particularly in the tech world, which 10 years ago, right? You would have told everybody to go to school and study coding, right? Or get a CS major, because that would have immediately got you $80,000 to $100,000 starting out, even if a little bit more than that. That doesn't seem to be there before. You have tons of students who are graduating with no job prospects. And even if they do manage to find a job, it's taken a hell of a lot longer than it would have before. I've also was looking at this. You're having universities around this country who are facing budget deficits. They're having to lay off staff. They're forcing people into retirement. They're seeing in lots of universities a drop in the amount of freshmen coming in because they don't even want to go. You have more students say, it's too much debt. It costs too much. Why? And if there's not a sure thing, if there isn't a sure career path at the end of it, that doesn't mean you're not having people going, but you're having an elevated decrease, right, of individuals deciding to do this. Some may decide to go to trade school, but everybody's concerned. Right now, the economy is perilous. There's a store that used to be called Everything's a Dollar store. Things went up to $1.25. So things under Biden administration went from $1 to $1.25. Under the Trump administration, I'm not saying it's because of Donald Trump. I'm just saying while he's been in office, now it's turned into a range. I visited the dollar store, right? It's turned into a range, a price range up to $7, right? So you can tell that, this happened. You're seeing people who normally would make their way to Whole Foods, because, they're quote unquote in the position. Now they're heading to the dollar store. We're going to the dollar store. We're shop pricing. So it's a lot of Americans are feeling a struggle. I don't care whether they're left, right, center, don't matter what their politics are. A lot of Americans are feeling a struggle. And one of the things I see that stands out among the people I personally talk to or personally engage with is all they do is what they're looking at is not just It's all this stuff going on overseas. A lot of Americans are quite upset and quite tired of that, right? Left, right, and center, right? You know, all the whatever it is, they're kind of tired of that, right? And they see the money, they see these bills, they see how much money is being added, give more money here, you do more this, do more that, and they see these pundits or these individuals making arguments for why you should be engaging in this country or that country or doing that. But what they're seeing is that the material conditions in the United States for the average American, sure, there are some people, if you're already rich or you're already doing well or you already got it made, you're doing just fine. But for a lot more Americans, they're not just feeling the strain, they've been feeling it for years. The strain and stress now has been going on for quite a long time. And a lot of people would say, you take it back to the 2008 recession, when George W. Bush was in office. That recession there was really the start of this sort of modern shift and change that we seemingly have not been able to fully recover from. And we're just kind of biding our time. But people are stressed. People are stressed in a way that they haven't been stressed in a long time. Not to say it hadn't happened before, but there's no end in sight. So you look at all that. No, there really isn't a legitimate reason that you could sell this economy under Donald Trump to be doing well, just like you couldn't legitimately sell, the previous economy of being well either, which is why Democrats are not in power at that time period, right? So neither, so right now it isn't doing well, and I'm like, if we're honest, it isn't really doing well for the average everyday Joe and Jonetta, or person on the street. It really isn't, right? And prices are continuing to be prices. I price check when I go to the store, not just because I want to price check for myself, but I price check to see, I remember what this used to be. Inflation, now this is what this cost is. This is where it's going to stay at. It's not going to go back down. It's not going to go back to $2.99. It's going to be $3.49, right? And then it's going to go up again. So, like I said, I don't know what whatever weed he is smoking, I want him to give me the weed, right? I'll take a toke of it. But it just isn't really the right time to try to play the game of, things are going better than they really are. We should have learned from Joe Biden that trying to sell an economy that people aren't really experiencing, at least a lot of people, it's not good at all. So I don't know what's going on there, but the economy isn't good, and it ain't. I don't see anybody. Maybe his most loyal supporters are buying it, even if they're not experiencing it. But I don't see how I can tell it.
So I'll send you the joint, but I can't guarantee you get to the place where his maths to him. I imagine you, no matter the joint, will still be at the place where as people my age say.
Yeah, 4 + 4 is 8, not 10. I don't know where he's getting the 10.
Because he's making it up.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Marshall. We'll go to JJ, followed by Brian.
Okay. Oh man. Well, I'll say this. I mean, y'all know how I feel about Trump. First and foremost, one thing that I really can't stand with, is to this question about Democrats versus Republicans and all this stuff. There's, what pisses me off is that Trump has managed to brainwash people into believing that he's some sort of victim and the media is all negative coverage. Yeah, they're covering it. They're covering what you're actually doing, sir. It's not their fault that what you're doing is negative. It's objectively negative. Any reasonable critical thinker with, 2 connected brain cells can come to the conclusion that it's negative. That's why it's not that the media doesn't like you. It's like, no, your actions are not worthy of any sort of praise or positive affirmation. Like, it's really, really weird. And not for nothing, this whole media thing, Fox News is basically state-sponsored television at this point. It's really just like a complete, they're all mouthpieces for Trump.
Well, I'm gonna
Don't slander my Sean Hannity. Even though I dislike Sean Hannity.
I'm gonna check you on this and ask you to please take the time, since you referred to yourself as a critical thinker, to recognize the difference between the Fox News bloviating personalities like Sean Hannity and Jesse Waters and Greg Gutfeld and Laura Ingraham and the actual journeymen and journeywomen journalists who go out into the field and cover the stories, including one who lost appendages covering the war in Ukraine at its inception.
Okay, that I can make that concession. I wasn't referring to them. I'm talking about the pundits who, for the most part, get the majority of the airtime because they are pretty much.
What about Sean Hannity? I think Sean Hannity is reading number two. Like watching Sean Hannity is basically like watching state television.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what. So I wasn't trying to infer that they're, the journalists who are actually doing, more substantial like actual news, they're, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, the pundits, who, some of them who is welcoming into in the White House, So I just the point is, it's a very frustrating, narrative about the media hates Trump, when literally, he has a lot of pundits on Fox News who consistently sanitize the absolute heinous acts that he and crimes, basically because that he, is a part of on a regular basis. We're now normalizing, the president committing crimes. Like that's pretty much what's going on a regular basis. Like it's really weird.
We look like America is corrupt now. We're like sucking.
See, I gave you a second chance, but you will not get a third. You know the rule of the room is we speak one at a time. I don't know why you think what you have to say is more important than the people who have been patiently waiting their turn. You will not be given that opportunity to speak again. JJ, continue, please.
Thank you, Gary. Yeah, so, damn, I lost my train of thought.
Right, which is another reason why people ought not to be interrupting folks. How would they like it if they were interrupted and lost their train of thought?
Exactly. I was saying that the Fox News thing, not pieces for Trump. Yeah, so, in any event, I think that what we're looking at now, I'll just move on to like I was going to say, what we're looking at now in terms of like why we, I was saying that, the crime part. Yeah, so we're now normalizing, the president committing crimes on a regular basis. Like this latest grift, that I'm hearing about him wanting to sell high-speed data access to like marketing, to market moving true social posts, and basically paying people for information. Like this is insider trading, folks. Like this is literally what's going on. Like the president wants to have certain people, basically, not the majority of people, probably in this room or the majority of Americans, pay like $100,000 for inside information that only they would have access to because basically he's already doing this with his friend circle and his team. So it's just another to enrich himself and and his elitist friends. So it's just another example of the corruption. So what we need to do, and a complete the opposite of what he actually ran on, which is I'm going to lower costs and and lower grocery prices and all of these things. That's the opposite of what's going on. He's the universal tariff, the completely shit. Wait, I forget if I can. Can I cuss, Gary? I'm like I don't want to disrespect it, but like just a complete like. Disrespect and and the dismantling of all of our relationships with other countries, beyond the tariffs. So he is creating a market and an environment where we're not gonna get the best trade deals. You're creating anti-American sentiment, amongst our allies, and then allying with people who are supposed to be our adversaries. So it's very, upside down. Shout out to Stranger Things. That's the world that he is creating for us. So when we're talking about why we would want to, kind of like the devil we know, and why we want to keep Trump versus the Democrats. Listen, I will say, as a Democrat, I will say this: the Democrats, like the Republicans, are definitely not perfect. But listen, people, we're not looking at we don't get perfect candidates. Like, this is an imperfect system. It's been imperfect from the very beginning, and even though it has progressed in certain ways, it still remains very, very flawed and imperfect. What we're looking at is who's going to give us the better results. And when we look at the Democratic Party and what they're advocating for versus Trump and the constant grift and oh yeah, by the way, when he's talking about, when he's literally asked the question about how Americans are feeling in terms of, prices, he literally says, I don't care. That's not something that I think about. That's our president, so, what you call it? At least the Democrats, which by the way, they have, even though Chuck Schumer, in my opinion, needs to retire, I think we need term limits and stuff, on a lot of these positions. You do have other people who are looking to step up. I think our King Jeffries, is pretty cool. Obviously AOC, and there are a lot of other people who will step up to the plate on the Democrat side.
Right, so, but why would you think that the president would go into economically depressed Michigan and claim to a bunch of auto workers where there have been layoffs and contractions and profit losses because of his tariffs? Why do you think he would go there and campaign for Mike Rogers on the economy?
That's a good question. Honestly, I'm not sure, to be honest.
I don't know if he's sure, to be honest, but I'll tell you this much, and I'm going to move on, JJ. I will say this. I understand him going in there with the blinders on, potentially, but doesn't the Rogers campaign realize that this is injurious to him? What are they thinking? I don't get it. Or there may be something there that I'm missing. Brian followed by Steve.
Wait, Gary, I just want to make one final point, if I may.
Yeah.
It's very important. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of land with this. The one thing that the president, because this is what I hear a lot of times from conservatives, in terms of what he actually got right, they always say immigration. What we fail to realize, because this doesn't get talked about enough, so I'm going to make this point, with immigration and undocumented immigrants, we got to get all the illegals out and everything. Undocumented immigrants or illegal aliens, however conservatives want to put it, contribute literally about $96 billion to our GDP every year. So they are, and they don't get the benefit of receiving, receiving things because they can't, because they're not citizens. So and we are actually spending. Last year, 2025, the ICE budget was $12 billion. Because of Trump's one big ugly bill. So basically, the juice is not worth the squeeze. We're spending a whole lot of money on immigration, murdering Americans in the street, and everybody who's black and brown, and by literally a bunch of white guys driving in masks, where a lot of them are very mentally disturbed. So we need to reframe how we look at immigration and even illegal immigration and reform the system without vilifying people, and understand that there's a lot of value there.
Contours around. I'm with you on that. You have to respect people's inherent dignity. Even if the reason that they came, I met some people in 2018 came, and I won't repeat the story, but I'll just get to the detail of it. They were here because we were the only safe place. They didn't want to make a life here. They weren't interested in becoming citizens. But their daughters were about the age in Central America to get pressed into sex slavery gangs, and their boys were at the age to get pressed into drug gangs. And they just ran, both of them. I mean, they're in their late 20s, early 30s when I met them in 2018. And like, we have to see those people's inherent humanity, dignity, and worth, right? As I say all the time, enforcing immigration law does not have to come at the cost of our humanity.
Thank you, Marshall. Thank you, JJ. Not the topic. Let's not get on to immigration. Brian, followed by.
Hey, I was gonna pick up there first off at the end of what y'all were saying about going to Michigan.
That's on topic.
Yeah, I think it ties to my overall point. So I guess I'll start with my overall point, then build up to that. So I think what Trump is doing is risky. I think what he's trying to do is use these tariffs to incentivize a lot of onshoring of critical industries. So like computing, if you've noticed, he highlights NVIDIA, Intel, some of these computer chip manufacturers that have committed to bringing back some of the development and creation. That's, I think, why he has gone after Greenland for the rare earth minerals. He's trying to break us away from dependence on China for the trinkets and also the natural resources. He's trying to make us energy independent, which explains why he did what he did with Venezuela and Iran. He sees a connection. It may not be there, but I think he sees a connection to reducing the influence of those bad actors in the way that they contribute to the cheap energy, the reduced price energy that was sold to China. So I think he's looking at this from a long-term perspective at the expense of short-term pain. So he knows the tariffs are, largely paid for by the American consumer. The reduced profits, these American companies get passed on to a lot of the consumers. So he looks at it like, if in 3, 5, maybe 10 years, I've brought back a lot of critical infrastructure to our country, energy independence, a lot of the critical defense industries that are now onshoring or manufacturing stuff here, the automotive industry, which ties, to what you guys are talking about at the end with JJ there. I think he looks at it like, I'm going to use this imprecise, blunt force tariff policy to reshape how America manufactures, how our economy operates. And yeah, there's going to be some pain because some companies, some industries are not going to be able to keep up. They're going to get hammered. But I think he's focusing on the industries that are going to improve the long-term independence, energy production, batteries, et cetera. And to him, it's worth it. So I think he's taken a hit in popularity, and I think he's taken a hit to his credibility and his, status and reputation and all that, because he looks at it like, we've become too dependent on China. Other countries are, bleeding us with, different unfair trade agreements and all those things. So I think he looks at it like the long-term benefit is worth the short-term pain.
He may see that, and I'm not going to argue that you're wrong in your assessment, but let's take the snapshot of yesterday in Michigan. He's at a GM proving ground talking about how great the economy is to people whose jobs are contracting. NVIDIA is expanding correctly. You're correct in that, in Texas and North Carolina. If he wants to go to Texas and North Carolina and argue that, he might have a receptive audience. But he's in Michigan talking to Michiganians who are considering voting for his guy for the U.S. Senate. I don't think that's helpful to his candidate.
I think he looks at it like the automotive industry, gets a lot of their stuff from foreigners, and by placing tariffs on those industries and foreign markets or foreign products, whatever, it encourages those logistics trail auto parts manufacturers to reshore those products. So
Right,
I
but,
think
but
he's
in the
not doing a
last
good job
year,
explaining
the
it,
number
but
of
I think that's his
manufacturing,
goal.
but in the last year, the number of manufacturing jobs decreased. I forget the number that I quoted earlier. I'm going to say 1,200. It's either 12 or 14. So let's go to the smaller figure. 1,200 manufacturing jobs decreased in Michigan over the past year. So how can you say to people who are losing their jobs or in fear of losing their jobs that the economy is doing swell? That was his message yesterday, standing next to a guy who's trying to become a U.S. Senator in a swing state while both parties are fighting tooth and nail for control of the Senate.
Yeah, I agree with that assessment or that takeaway. I think he's doing a bad job of explaining it. So, I mean, he has said these things, and other people, advocates or surrogates, have said it on his behalf. I don't think he's come right out and said, I'm willing to endure short-term pain for the long-term benefit of reshoring and revitalizing, some of these key industries. But I think that's what's happening. He's doing this broad brush, broad policy of tariffs to force this, and he's incentivizing certain industries, and he's rewarding certain industries, and he's trying to coax certain industries
He
because
tariffs like he's playing checkers. He just randomly wakes up one day and is like, I'm going to tariff this part of the world. No, I'm going to tariff that part of the world. No, I'm going to tariff the other part of the world.
Yeah, it does look chaotic, I agree. But
when you're tariffing, again, additionally, Canada over the smoke from the wildfires.
Exactly.
What the hell is that?
Yeah.
It's Trump being the petty person that he is. Nobody ever accused Trump of being a big person. He's not. Trump is a small person. He may be the president of the United States, the most important person in the world, but he's a small human being.
Well,
He thinks the petty stuff is the way to go.
Think about the effect that has. I mean, we've heard from people close to Kim Jong-un and others around the world. Kim Jong-un was scared shitless when he talked about Little Rocket Man and My Button Works and all this stuff. They were like, this is not how politicians this is not how the U.S. president operates. This is not how previous U.S. presidents
Right, that's absolutely
operate.
true. That's absolutely
the
true.
Uncertainty,
but doesn't
the
really
chaotic nature of his style, and the pettiness that you're calling, I think accurately, gives people notice and gives people warning that, hey, if we're going to do these things that are anti-American or what he perceives as anti-American policies and restrictive or punitive measures against us.
That would be one thing if this were just in foreign policy. I think I could almost deal with his pettiness in foreign policy.
I'm saying it has.
It's the domestic side of his pettiness that I can't take. The fact that he had to go on an unhinged rant about the press at the correspondence dinner, where all you're supposed to do is show up, laugh a little bit, and shut your mouth, and thank the press for another wonderful year. That's all you're supposed to do.
Well, every president prior to him had a speechwriter who made jokes where he poked fun at himself.
Right. If you look at the way Trump operates, if you see him on stage or in front of the camera, if you follow him closely enough, you realize that that's not the way he operates in person and off camera.
I know he has a totally different personality off camera.
Right.
I get that.
He's clearly weaponizing these camera-ready tactics to create an effect. He tries to bully people. He tries to intimidate people. He tries to use this petty, thin-skinned veneer to get people to back off, to think twice, to not do these things, to not challenge him, because he realizes he doesn't have time to screw around. He doesn't have time to implement a precise scalpel-like approach with tariffs or other trade agreements. The president just doesn't have that much time during a
I'll give you that, but I'll give you an area domestically where it's really hurt him. The Save America Act. He wants that thing passed. The fact that he is so petty prevents him from gaining a lot of different congressional relationships across the aisle with people who are moderate that are unwilling to look past their own offense. Now,
look at what happened to the people who
I would
caused him,
I would
Tom
agree with
Phillips,
you if you said not looking past your own offense is equally as small. I agree with that. Not looking past your own offense and not working for the country is equally as small as what he is doing. But the smallness on the domestic side has real effects for how we build with people of the opposite party. And it makes it harder to build with those. Now, I'm not talking about like building with somebody who wants to, whip out the U.S. Senate or anything. But I am saying, those kind of moderate Democrats in districts that are a little swingy, right? Like those are the people you want to work for. And the smallness makes that work a little harder in Congress.
Well, it's a double-edged sword. I think he clears out the people. You're either for him, you're either with him or against him. So people like Tom Tillis and others who, are willing to stand up to him and delay and, push back openly with votes, he's going after you. So this brings out let's say, the true nature of people like Tom Tillis who end up getting primaried, who end up, getting forced to retire. So he clears the bench. He doesn't wait around for like he did in his first term. I think he was, realizing I screwed up my first term. I was way too tolerant. I was way too patient. I let people snooker me.
Okay, so I'll grant you that being in the majority.
I'm not screwing around.
Yeah, so I'll grant you being in the majority could look a whole lot more like Lindsey Graham and a whole lot less like Tom Tillis. Right? Like Lindsey Graham was a foundationally institutionalist heart, believed that you should work with the American president in the legislature to accomplish their goals. Granted, like if Trump does or says something particularly like out of whack, I do expect people to stand up and go, no, that's nuts, we're not doing that. You can have everything else, but you can't have that. Right? I expect people to hop to and say that kind of stuff. And I imagine they got said to in private.
I'm just saying he knows what he's doing when he goes on camera and acts like an asshole. He does it on purpose. He targets the enemies that he perceives to be against his agenda.
Well, yeah,
But that's not-
I don't
but
by any
that's-
stretch of the imagination perceive Trump
but
to be a
that's
stupid
not-
man.
That's not the topic of the room. The topic of the room is he trying to sell an economic policy that's not resonating with the voters? And I think probably the answer to that question is yes, at least in Michigan, that's for sure. Thank you, Brian. We're going to move on to Steve, followed by Agent.
Thank you.
Yeah, let me kind of dovetail on what Brian was saying there. Let me ask you this, Gary. You're a fellow Michigander and lived in that area for years, so you got a rich history of the machinations of the automobile industry. What policy for the last 40 years in Michigan has protected the manufacturing jobs there? We can go to
I don't think that is germane to the
Well, I think it
discussion.
actually is. I think it actually
Well, no, actually it is not, because the president came in, this president, at this time, during this specific economic situation, and claimed to the people there that the economy is great, and they know it's not great. And so why would you do that? That's the question. If I were Mike Rogers, the last person I would want campaigning for me is President Trump, certainly not on the economic issue.
If I was Trump, this is how I'd frame it. Look, for the last 40 or 50 years, politicians have sold you out. Take a look around Michigan. Take a look at the number of manufactured jobs that was here in the 70s. Take a look at what's here now. Take a look at how many manufacturing jobs has moved to Mexico. And why did that happen? Because we had a trade policy that allowed foreign countries and companies to dump. U.S. Steel being one of them, the manufacturing automobile industry being another. We allowed a set of economic policies that has absolutely decimated the United States. And if I'm Trump, I'm telling them this. Hey, look, this is going to take a little correction time. This didn't occur in 10 years. It didn't occur in 20 years. This is something that's been eroding at your manufacturing base here in Michigan for the last 50 years. Now, yes, there is an art to this. But no, you cannot expect to allow companies to come in here like we allowed in steel, like we've allowed in so many industries across this country, to come in here and dump products below manufacturing costs for the benefit of market share and decimate companies and say with a straight face that we're going to follow this model and somehow it's going to be beneficial. I can give you this right here. I know people in the area that I live in right now that are struggling to find jobs that they have to have assistance to even live. When I was 18 years old, me and the guy was sitting around one night and we decided we're going to go look for work. We called some people up in Cleveland where manufacturing was robust, where the plant was running wide open. Said, hey man, what's going on up there in Cleveland? Said, well, there's a couple of jobs open. You guys want to come up? Yeah, we'll come up. We left on a Friday. We spent the weekend. Monday morning, we walked into the office. Monday afternoon, we was hired. Tuesday, we went to work. That is what has been taken from this country, from the people of this country, and to think that if you allow this kind of imbalanced trade policy and somehow, as your factories and your workforce is being crushed into poverty, that you are going to produce wealth. No, there's going to be a little pain with this. But I want to tell you what, and I've watched this. I told my wife in the early 80s, as I seen this trend accelerate, I said this is going to decimate the manufacturing base of the United States. I said it's going to put more people on the welfare, which is going to, and the only way that they're going to correct this is with more government programs to take the sting out of economic policies that is decimating this country. And to think that somehow anything but this course of action is going to alleviate the problem that has been festering in this country through politicians and through multinationals that have sold the American worker out for globalization. We had in the early 80s, you can go up and look at Youngstown, Ohio. It used to be a vibrant manufacturing center. Vibrant. Go look at Youngstown today. Go look at Akron today. These was manufacturing jobs that people went to work in, they raised a family, and they retired from. And we allowed companies from overseas, we allowed countries to inflict on us, not just the country, but the heart of the country, the worker of this country, economic policies that had one inevitable outcome, and that was the decimation of our manufacturing sector. So if you think you're going to become rich, if you think that somehow you're going to have a vibrant economy while you allow every country, you allow NATO to suck you dry while you sit and pay their bills while they continue to put money into this social programs. Oh, we're messing up NATO. Yeah, it was fine for NATO not to pay their bill in defending their place, their rally, while they sucked money and allowed the U.S. taxpayer at the same time he was having his jobs taken from him to subsidize the programs that was going for welfare and social programs in Europe. If you think that you can operate as a country to have everybody on the face of this earth flim-flamming you, allowing anybody you want to waltz through your southern border, allow those persons to come into your country. My brother, God,
what does this have to do, Steve, respectfully, with the topic at hand? The question is the president's claim, he's trying to sell the economy to the American people, is it resonating with the American people?
No,
You're
it
talking
may
about,
not.
you're talking
It may
about,
not.
you're
It
talking
may not in a superficial kind of way.
in a superficial kind of way.
Yeah, in a superficial kind of way, and I'll elaborate on that. Because if anyone would think through these problems, if anyone has lived through these problems and realized what I just articulated to you, that any other course of action is going to lead to higher unemployment, it's going to lead to lower take-home pay for the average worker, it's going to lead to more social welfare for the American worker because they've been sold out. What he should tell them is those plants in Mexico, Detroit, that you got sold out and the multinationals went down there to get cheap labor, well, we're going to stop that, and they're going to have to come back here and make them. And you're going to have a job, and you're going to be able to feed your family. So yeah, this arc may be slow, but this is the only arc that is going to save us. And if anyone can't see this, anyone that's lived through this since the late 70s and has watched this, and is there's a town 20 miles from me, used to have 4 factories. Guess how many factories are in there now, Gary? None. Not one factory. That town that went from a vibrant, prosperous town to it looks like it's starting to look, the portions of it starting to look almost third world. Well, how did that happen? How it happened was those manufacturers was put out of business. The people that was working there, that was investing in the community, are no longer able to hold a good job. So you guys can call these tariffs stupid. Okay, whatever. What I call stupid is a man in Youngstown that had a good job, that was feeding his family, and politicians and multinationals that allowed a foreign company to come in here, dump steel under cost, and bankrupt that company, and send all those men home, and leave their family out on the street. Now, if that's what you want, that's what you'll get. But if you're not willing to bite the bullet and tell everybody in the world, from the southern border to China, you're not going to take advantage of us anymore. We will stand our ground. We're going to have a manufacturing base. And if you don't sell at competitive, if you think you can come in here and dump in our market, drive our companies out of business, and we're going to stand back and take it, you're wrong. And he's the only one that's had the nerve to stand up and say this in the last 50 years, and I get sick of this.
Okay.
You know what it sounds like to me? It sounds so much like Huey P. Long's Low Papa Hiram, High Papa Lowrum. Not the content, Steve, but the energy of the speech. That's what it reminded me of. And he was attractive because he spoke to people's angst in Louisiana. I mean, he's corrupt as all get out, but Louisiana had 25 miles of paved roads before he became governor, and 300 and some odd miles after he became governor. And I hear shades of High Papa Lowrum and Low Papa Hiram. If nobody's ever heard that, type it into Google. It's this speech where he's talking about there being no difference between the Democrats and the Republicans other than one wants to skin you from the neck down and one wants to skin you from the feet up. It's called High Papa Lowrum, Low Papa Hiram. It sounds very similar.
Like I said, Marshall.
Well, Mike, I don't know anything about that. But I do know...
Go ahead, Gary, I'm sorry.
But I do know it was a very eloquent argument about the historical economic situation in the United States in recent years. That does not address the question of the room. Why would the president go to Michigan where they are losing manufacturing jobs, where the tariffs are hurting the economy there, and tell a bunch of auto workers at a rally at the General Motors Proving Ground in Milford, Michigan, how great the economy is, while campaigning Mike Rogers, who's running for the U.S. Senate, when quite naturally that message today is not going to resonate with the people of Michigan. And so what he is doing detracts from the campaign of the Republican candidate. Why would he do that?
Let me address that real quick, Gary. I'm sitting on my front porch right now. I'm staring at some tomatoes that are ripening. Very good, Can't get this kind of flavor in the store. It's grown locally. When I planted those tomato plants, there was nothing on the vine. If I would tell someone, hey, there's a tomato plant, you're going to enjoy what comes out of there. Am I lying to them? Or am I pointing out the fact that the foundation, the thing
But
that you
you
need...
told them that the economy is great. He says it's great. It's going to get better. Hang in there. It's going to get better.
Well, that would be the thing. If someone said to me, we need food, and I'd say, it's coming. Would I be lying when we can go back and look
All
at
right,
the tomato
all right.
plant?
No,
All right,
I would like to
so
just-
if
before you
if
move on,
nothing-
I'd like to add there's a founding leg to add to this, which I've looked at some of the research papers for this on the right hand side, and they pull from something known as the Infant Industry Program, run by Hamilton. And it's this program that took us the steel and pig iron trade. It's a combination of import and export tariffs. And so some of the thought process is built on founding tariff regime put in place by Alexander Hamilton to steal industries from the English. At least that's kind of how it was put together in this book anyway. I think that's what Steve is kind of getting at. So maybe that's just saying it in another way.
Yeah,
I think Steve's capable. I think Steve's capable.
Gary, I'll grant he was being a little bombastic, but if people cannot look back on the time frame that I described, and some people haven't lived it. I've been alive long enough to see this whole thing, the whole arc unfold. I know what happened. I know why it happened.
Do you think that was a wise move? You're a Republican, right? You want to see the
Right.
Republicans maintain control of the Senate. Do you think it was a wise move for the president to do what he did yesterday? Do you think it was helpful to the desire to maintain the Republican in the Senate?
No, I don't. In the way you articulate, what he should have said is like I referred to tomato plants. The plant's in underground. It's going to yield fruit. You got to wait for the fruit to come on the vine. The plan is in place. If you're unhappy with the amount of people you got manufacturing today, wait just a second. We're going to bring those jobs back from Mexico. We're going to have a more robust economic system in place to where over a period of time, it may not be while I'm in office, but the foundation's laid. The walls are ready to go up. The roof is ready to go on. You will reclaim your rightful spot as a car manufacturing center of the world. That's how I would put it.
So I feel two ways about this. I simultaneously really, really loathe making arguments that are good for Trump because I think Trump is a petty person. And I don't want to give the petty person anything, so I'm being equally as petty. I shouldn't be, but I am. That's my natural kind of inclination. On council, I can be a bit more balanced. But I don't know, like, people who my younger brother and people who also work in financial policy said, like, financial economic policy, said something to the effect of Trump's tariff regime, and maybe this is because it wasn't explained, was like watching somebody play with toys who was financially illiterate. Because he'd spent all his life in the economy, right? His like grown-up life, but it didn't operate the way he thought, which is why I offered the Infant Industry Plan as a kind of mediary. I think tariffing does have a place. The problem is the president doesn't always make decisions, at least this president, that are always super considered, right? Yeah, he's got a facade. Yes, I think some decisions are a little bit more somber to him than others. But he's got this streak in him. And my little brother calls it the shot in the foot streak. And he'll do good, he'll do good, he'll do good, and then bam! Right in the foot. And he just can't help himself. And so there becomes reason to criticize. And he's not the kind of person that's publicly going to cop to it. He just isn't. Like, I've given up on that. I don't think I'm too trying. You know what? I was wrong. Maybe in a private meeting where he doesn't have to account to anybody, you can probably hear him say that. But I doubt he'd ever say that in public.
Marshall, could I ask you one thing?
Of course.
Let me ask you this. There's an old saying, the proof's in the pudding. All these financial experts, all these Fortune 100 experts, all these multinationals, all these politicians for the last 50 years, what's the proof of their policies? What's the proof in our manufacturing base? What's the proof in our workforce that's involved in producing steel, that's involved in producing cars, that's involved in producing
we don't really have one. I read
Marshall, we transitioned from, like, over the 20th century, from a manufacturing economy to a service economy. And
I read this
we're
paper
doing
by the National Interest that we transitioned, yes. But it was talking about navies that were brittle and non-brittle. And the thesis of the paper was that those that can regenerate quickly are non-fragile navies. The United States Navy is in the place of the Japanese Navy at the beginning of World War I. We just don't have the defense industrial base that can mobilize quickly enough to replace a $12 billion aircraft carrier that's sunk.
And Marshall, isn't this just basic capitalism, right? This is right at Adam Smith. Right?
No, Scott, let me ask you a question.
Let me just finish. This is basic capitalism, right? Adam Smith, right? That you do what you're good at, right? And import the other. You get stuff from people that are good at other stuff, right? That you don't try to do stuff that you're just not competitive with, right? And I'm not confident that given the expectations of labor costs in this country, that we can be competitive at a large scale in manufacturing. Right?
Then we have to be willing to outsource that.
Let me ask Scott this question. Let me ask Scott this question. What is inevitable, or what is fair when you allow a foreign company to come in here and dump products into your manufacturing sector?
I'm going to move on. We've had this discussion.
Scott?
I'm sorry. This discussion is going on ad nauseum. There are other people trying to participate. I try to strike a balance that, and I allow a little latitude when we get off topic. I think we got way off topic today. Agent followed by silly. Agents.
Sorry, I was sprinting from
Did you fall asleep listening to that last argument?
In my head, there was someone else who was, I was nodding off, but I think, I thought there was someone else ahead of me as well. But it's really good to be here. I'm honored that there was still, that you could make room for me on the stage here. Is Trump selling an economy the voters aren't buying? I think we're going to see, I don't know if it's because of economic reasons, but at least, I don't know, we talked about it this morning, Scott had a room, I think there's conflicting views about polling and things like this, because some are saying, look, it's not looking good. CNN, Barry Weiss's CNN is kind of having some pieces indicating it's not looking good for Democrats. Leading into this, and it's breaking historic trends of like midterm elections where the opposing party tends to, take back control, and it's not looking good at the moment for Democrats, which I think says a lot. I mean, there's a lot for Americans to kind of be upset about.
But Asian, just to clarify, because we talked about this earlier, right? In the Fox News poll, the generic ballot, right, is the highest it's ever been in a difference, right? Democrats +7 since they started polling this in '96. I mean, so I mean it's. I mean that's. I mean not that that's everything, right? But that's not nothing. I mean that's well out of the margin of error.
Yeah. So it could be that too. It's, and I guess what I'm getting at, thank you for pointing that out, is that it's very difficult for us to make sense of how people really feel right now. I do, maybe to the point of the last speaker, I think you have to kind of buy a narrative about about the short-term pain for the long-term gain and so forth. I think for a lot of sectors to think that the tariffs are a good idea, and that Trump is doing the right thing, I guess, against so much, trend of management for the last however long, at least 30 years, but maybe 60 years or so of the U.S. economy to de-tariff, to lower trade barriers and so forth, and he's doing the opposite. But at the same time, I don't know, the average voter, I don't put a lot of stock into their sense-making ability. I think a lot of the time they're just going on vibes, and then do they think, if they are struggling, do they think that the other side, what's the likability there, and then do they think they're actually going to materially improve their lives more than the side currently in power? Or has the side currently in power done something horrific that they're trying to punish? I think that the war is maybe the biggest thing Trump has done that's disruptive in that way, and just the sense I'm getting, it's not as unpopular as, I think it is unpopular. For sure, you poll people, they're like, no, we don't want to be at war. But it's not causing the level of outrage or anger that I think even the war in Iraq caused, and even that took a little while for people to actually really decide they didn't like it, because they were pretty gung-ho at first. So, yeah, I'm not sure, Gary, if it's gonna, I think there's a decent chance the Republicans maintain control, and then that's really your answer. So, thank you.
Thank you, Agent Silly. And if time permits, we'll go back to Alma. Silly?
Hi, hello everyone. So on the topic of Trump selling an economy, I find myself feeling some empathy for him, because there's not much of an economy to sell. It's about 6 AI companies trading amongst themselves, and everyone just has to make memes about how they're unemployed. But within the economy that Trump is trying to sell, Trump himself is an economy. He's selling phones, he's selling Bitcoin, he's selling gold citizenship. He is trying to sell an economy. It's just not the US economy, it's his own. And it's a complete and total Vastakanahaya. And he continues to lash out at the
What does that mean? You gotta explain that to an American audience. What's that mean?
It's nothing, it doesn't mean anything, it's fine. He just continues to lash out at the White House Correspondents' Dinner as well. The one, and it was more of a disaster than the one that got shot up, really. And these strange behaviors, to me, are indicative of his inability to recontextualize a stagnant economy. The erratic behavior, to me, culminated in his abominable behavior at Lindsey Graham's funeral. I understand Lindsey Graham was flamboyant, so maybe he'd like a flamboyant funeral, but Trump's behavior from the top to the bottom was to deride Graham's foreign policy, where Graham was...
Wait a minute, I listened to that. That's not what he said. I listened to the president make the speech. That's not what he said. He held Lindsey Graham up as a paragon of foreign policy. Like, come on, man. Sounds like you didn't watch the speech at all.
Okay,
but I watched it.
Sorry, I'm just saying that what I mean about Trump's inability to sell this economy is he's lost his ability to really sell anything. The other day, he said the Islamic Republic of Japan. He called Zelensky Putin. How is this man supposed to sell an economy that already isn't great? So what he's doing to the Republican Party as a whole in these upcoming midterm elections, and the disgrace he showed at Lindsey Graham's funeral, I think is unforgivable.
Well, I can't speak to Graham's funeral because I did not see it. That's the first I've heard that he spoke in a disgraceful manner toward the senator.
He didn't say anything disgraceful. I listened to it in my own ears.
Thank you, Marshall. Alma, you're back.
Strange. Well, I mean, I listened to you guys since the last time I was up here and everything, and on top of what I said earlier, I have to say that feel free to laugh, but it's not. There used to be this whole saying, "It's the economy, stupid," which I'm sure you've all heard. I'm gonna say now, it's not the economy, stupid, and here's why. We live in a different place and in different times, and like I said earlier, Trump goes by the stock market. He goes by the somebody tells him he's not going to figure this out on his own. Somebody is going to tell him that there are a lot more millionaires now because of their 401k. Anybody who has a 401k should be doing pretty good because Tide will lift all boats. And you factor in also the real estate, the equity in homes. Now that homes are averaging maybe, I don't know, 400 grand, when it used to be 150, 170 at one point. So the consensus is a lot of people that he is trying to appease, they on paper at least, it look like they're doing pretty well. Never mind that most people are struggling to make a mortgage payment or a car payment or the affordability issue. So that gets muddied very quickly. But I think the reason people will continue to vote for him because he is perceived by a fairly large portion of the population in this country and a lot of people overseas as he is the protector, the last guard at the gate of what we used to perceive as normal. Remember, this is a 50s guy. He came of age in the 50s. Things were very different back then. And a lot of people, when they talk about the good old days, rightly or wrongly, they long back to the 50s. And a lot of people overseas see him as the last guard against the idea of a man who tries to dress as a woman playing on a women's team. That's a very big issue for a lot of people here and a big issue for a lot of people overseas. They see the planet is shifting and they don't like the direction it's going to. And while they may not be able to go back to the 50s, they would love to go back to a simpler time where, let's just say, men were clearly identified as men.
Right, but the discussion yesterday in Milford, to which we are referring, had to do with the economy, not transgender rights. So you're I don't know why people have to always take us off topic. I dealt with this. I may be a little abrupt today. I've dealt with this all day long on my social media. I say one thing and people claiming I say another. Go back and read it. Go back and read it again. Go back and read it a third time, but more slowly. Because that's not what I said. I just don't get it. So with regard to the president's demeanor at Lindsey Graham's funeral, according to PBS, it was a laudatory, warm eulogy. However, the mere U.S., for what it's worth, headline is Donald Trump labeled despicable by Fox News viewers over Lindsey Graham eulogy. And they're mentioning Fox News viewers because it was being streamed by Fox, so people were commenting. I don't know whether this is respectful or not based on the way they write it, but they say President Trump faced backlash over his remarks from his eulogy for the late Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, which upset conservatives. Fox News halted regular programming, live streamed the eulogy. It took place at the National Cathedral. Trump mentioned Graham was, quote, not liked by everyone because he was a tough cookie. I don't know whether that's disrespectful. Trump said, quote, he did things God in Washington that virtually everyone, Republican and Democrat, liked Lindsey. Well, not everybody, but it sounds good. The president cracked up at his own joke and added, not everybody. He was a tough cookie, I have to be honest. I have to veer from this for a second, Trump continued before calling out Lindsey's sister. He was a tough cookie, Darlene, but he was beautiful. I don't know how that is disrespectful to Graham's legacy, but of course, this is not in context, this is not listening to the inflections, but apparently some people agree with our caller, Marshall, that he was disrespectful. Hopefully tomorrow, like the topic, we will stick to the topic. It's really wearying when you start or you end your day at the start of everybody else's day, battling people who are deliberately misrepresenting what you have typed in social media, and then bookend it with people who come on and talk about things other than the topic we are discussing. I don't know, I allow latitude a lot, but maybe I ought not to because it's really bothering me. And so maybe I need to wield a heavy gavel in that regard as well. Folks, I'll take your feedback on that. We're here Monday through Friday at 5 o'clock New York time, so until 5 o'clock New York time tomorrow for the next edition of the Critical Thinking Forum. Everybody be safe, be well, and peace out.